You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, May 11th, 2025. As we record this new episode, I hope the moms listening to this episode had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. The Chicago White Sox wrapped up their brief visit back home as they won another series, this time against the Miami Marlins. But it was breaking news just minutes before first pitch this past Friday that generated some excitement within the White Sox fan base. Tim Elko, the hot-hitting first baseman down in AAA, was finally getting the call to the majors. And did he have a big moment this weekend? We'll recap Elko's first weekend. Andrew Vaughn had a very good offensive weekend for himself too, as he hit 2 home runs against the Marlins. Also preview the upcoming road series as the White Sox travel to Cincinnati to face the Reds. Sox Machine will be sending James Fegan to Cincy, again in large thanks to our wonderful supporters. In this episode, we'll also have our first quarter grades and what's catching our attention around Major League Baseball as things are getting pretty bad in Colorado. We start with Tim Elko, the 10th round pick in the 2022 Major League Baseball draft for the Chicago White Sox, signing for just $35,000 out of Ole Miss. Elko is a legend in Oxford, Mississippi, and SEC baseball in general. Back in 2021, Elko tore his ACL and had a very tough decision to make. Get surgery and not only miss the rest of the 2021 season, but miss quite a bit of the 2022 season too, or gut it out. Elko amazingly gutted it out, and in the SEC tournament hit 2 home runs in a game against Vanderbilt. The following season, Elko hit 24 home runs and drove in 75 RBIs for Ole Miss. In the College World Series, Elko went 4 for 5 with a home run and helped power the Rebels to winning their first national championship. Ever since Elko has been with the White Sox organization, he's hit. In 325 games in the minor leagues, Elko has a career .293 batting average with a .348 on-base percentage and slugging .495 with 61 home runs and 218 RBIs. At age 26, Elko's not much of a prospect, and having already hit 10 home runs in 31 games with the Charlotte Knights this season, White Sox fans clamoring for Elko have been puzzled with his delayed call to the majors. For a franchise sorely lacking offensive power, why not call up the guy who is bashing home runs at a high rate in AAA? Well, Elko finally got the call and spoke with reporters prior to his Major League Baseball debut on Saturday, May 10th.
Just a lot of help from people around me. We got Jim and Rosie and Fuller and so many people to thank, and that have helped me along this journey and this year, and just kind of get me locked in on pitch decisions and swinging the pitches to do damage to, and just a lot of people to thank. And yesterday when I was getting on the plane and my first time flying first class, and I was kind of like, dang, I guess I'm going to the big leagues. So, no, it's getting here and seeing all the guys again, and I've already got so many buddies up here, so that makes it a little easier. But it's starting to hit me now, and excited we're not on the field tonight.
When it comes to playing time, the White Sox did not option Andrew Vaughn, and Chris Getz looked smart for not doing that, as Vaughn had a big weekend against the Miami Marlins. Vaughn went 3 for 12 with 2 home runs and 3 RBIs, helping the White Sox win the series. Now it's a matter of how playing time will be divvied up, as it doesn't make much sense to call up Elko to sit on the bench. White Sox manager Will Venable shared his thoughts on how he's going to manage playing time for both Elko and Vaughn.
Yeah, just game by game. I mean, he's going to be in there. We want to see what it looks like, and obviously excited about the potential offensively and defensively, and he's also makes a huge impact in the clubhouse. So he's going to be in there, and excited to see it. The fact that those guys don't play other positions besides first base mostly, it does change it if you're trying to get them both in the lineup, obviously. At the same time, we're going to take each day and build out our lineup and kind of how we set it up with who the best guys are for that day. And sometimes that might involve both of them, sometimes it might not, and other times it might be someone else at DH. So we'll just take it day by day and see how it all fits together.
Elko has plenty of friends in the White Sox clubhouse, including pitcher Jonathan Cannon, who helped get his buddy acclimated to the White Sox clubhouse.
Rode over here with Cannon, and he's one of my good buddies. And just walking in, kind of seeing all the layout and everything, and just getting a feel for being here. It's a pretty cool feeling.
Tim Elko didn't have a memorable Major League Baseball debut as he was held hitless, but he enjoyed his first Major League game and the experiences that came with it.
Be able to see them and some of my friends that came too. Just a surreal moment, all the hard work comes to fruition, and have them there with me was great. And just great to see them. And my dreams came true, and I got to be a big leaguer today, and looking forward to playing some more games with these guys. I didn't get a whole lot of great pitches to hit. They're making some good pitches, and I felt like I took some balls and swung at some pitches that were there on the borderline, and that's baseball sometimes when they make good pitches.
Elko's big moment, and why so many of us have been advocating for his promotion, came to fruition on Sunday. With the game tied 1-1 and Marlins pitcher Sandy Alcantara approaching 100 pitches, Elko made his mark.
Elko hits this one hard, left field, going back, it is gone! Welcome to Chicago, Tim Elko. His first big league home run, and he gives the Sox the lead here in the 6th inning.
CHSN's John Shriffen and Steve Stone on the call as Elko smashed a 3-run homer with an 81-mile-per-hour bat swing, generated a 101-mile-per-hour exit velocity, and his deep fly flew 381 feet into left field. A massive swing, and it's won the game for the White Sox as they won the home series against Miami, in large thanks to big hits not only from Tim Elko, but also Andrew Vaughn. We'll see if the extra motivation helps Vaughn get back on track, and maybe Will Venable will have some much-needed power in his lineup.
I'm excited to tell you about the designs Homage has cooked up for the 2025 MLB season. If you're as baseball obsessed as I am, you'll love the full roster of major league looks from Homage. Amazing comfort and deep cut designs that help fans show off passion for their favorite teams. Homage has a massive selection that tells the story of the greatest sport from its very beginnings. Deep logo history, coast-to-coast stadium tours, and the biggest players from every era. Legends never die at Homage. If you need your new shirt for going to a ball game, Homage has you covered with its most comfortable fan clothing, and it's available for fans of all ages. This year's collection hits dinger after dinger after tater. Fleece, tees, bottoms, and more. And don't forget to check out the new starter jacket lineup, an iconic dugout look you don't want to miss. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die, and these looks go long, period. Check out the Homage MLB collection to find your team's coolest gear.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Sox Machine, along with our friends from the 108 and Chicago Sports Bums, are hosting the hashtag 108ing road trip, visiting Pittsburgh from July 18th to the 20th. This road trip is almost sold out. We only have 20 tickets available for our pregame party at McFadden's Pittsburgh, plus the game ticket for Saturday, July 19th, as the White Sox battle the Pirates. Each ticket comes with a $10 concession credit. So this is the hashtag 108ing package. It's only $65, includes the 2 hours all you can drink at McFadden's for the pregame party, plus the game ticket, plus the $10 concession credit. It's a great deal and a big reason why we are so close to selling out due to capacity. Go to shop.soxmachine.com to purchase your package. Also available is the road trip gear. Our friends from the 108 in their store now have t-shirts and trucker caps for purchase. You can get the hashtag 108ing bundle that includes a shirt, cap, and the official road trip koozie for $35. Pre-orders are taking place now, so you can get the gear before making your way to Pittsburgh. Visit fromthe108.bigcartel.com. Again, that URL is fromthe108.bigcartel.com to purchase. And we can't wait to see everyone in Pittsburgh. The Chicago White Sox first quarter of the 2025 season is over. After winning the series against the Miami Marlins, the White Sox are 12-29. That's the same record they had last year in the first quarter. Comparing the 2025 to the 2024 first quarters, the White Sox have scored 20 more runs this season than last year. They've scored 139 runs so far compared to the 119 starting 2024. Runs allowed, the 2025 squad has allowed 35 fewer runs than last year, 174 runs allowed so far compared to 209 last year. You may ask, wait a minute, if the White Sox this season have scored 20 more runs than last year at this point and allowed 35 fewer runs, how could they end up with the same record? Yes, it's a bit baffling. Looking at expected win-loss records, the White Sox are underachieving in 2025 by 4 games. Their expected record should be 16-25. White Sox bench coach Walker McKibben shared his thoughts in a pregame scrum with the media during the Miami Marlins series, and he agrees that the White Sox have left some wins on the field.
First and foremost, no one's happy with the win-loss record, and that's what's most important here. But underneath the hood, we are working really hard to reorder some things, build things up, and like where everything's headed here. The thing that I leave the park here happy about every single day is we've got this really, really great group of people, players, coaches, support staff. Everyone's really, really great. And we are all on the same page. We are all working really, really hard and trying to get this thing right. And again, the wins and losses, haven't shown up here in the first 40 or so, first quarter of the season. We expect more, and all the things that we're doing kind of behind the scenes, we do expect those to lead to more wins and losses. Being able to weather these storms, we've had some really tough losses, right? Everyone's been watching those, and they're deflating losses, but we got this great group here that just picks each other up, and we're ready to go, and we show up the same day, ready to compete, and we feel like we have a chance to win every single day, and we are in games for the most part. Every single day, fighting for that win, and couple things here or there. I think there's 12 to 15 games where you can be like, hey, man, if we had just done this or this a little bit better, like that's a win here. So staying in line, keeping doing those things with this great group of guys, we're just going to keep pushing and expect that to turn into wins and losses.
Next weekend, Sox Machine will be hosting a White Sox watch party at the Remova Loft inside the Remova Theater off 35th in Halstead on Saturday, May 17th at 1 p.m. Central Time. Watch the White Sox battle the Chicago Cubs on Remova's 20-foot video wall. We'll have baseball trivia going on between innings and baseball bingo throughout the game, where you can win prizes. Remova now has a burger of the month, which this month's is a muffaletta burger. That sounds awesome. You can also check out the new beer options as well. The event is free and kids are welcome, so if you have problems getting CHSN to work on your antenna, or you don't even have the marquee channel, or you don't have the CHSN app, forget those stresses and come down to the Remova Loft for the Sox Machine watch party to watch the White Sox against the Cubs on Saturday, May 17th.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Planning a trip this year? Travel smarter and connect deeper by learning the local language with Rosetta Stone. With over 30 years of experience, Rosetta Stone's immersive, intuitive method helps you live the language, not just memorize it. Choose from over 25 languages, including Spanish, French, Japanese, and more. Their true accent speech recognition technology gives real-time feedback to help perfect your pronunciation. No translations, just natural learning that builds from words to phrases to full conversations. Whether you have 5 minutes or an hour, you can learn anytime on desktop or mobile. Get a lifetime membership and unlock all 25 languages. Learn as much as you want, whenever you want. Rosetta Stone. Learn confidently. Connect authentically. Don't wait. Unlock your language learning potential now. Listeners can grab Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. That's unlimited access to 25 language courses for life. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50 to get started and claim your 50% off today. Don't miss out. Go to rosettastone.com/pod50 and start learning today.
Continuing the conversation about the White Sox first quarter of 2025, Tim Elko and Andrew Vaughn, and look ahead to the Cincinnati Reds series. Joining me is the Sox Machine beat reporter James Fegan, and all the way in Alaska, managing editor Jim Margulis. Jim, how's Alaska?
It's fine. Starting to bloom right now in mid-May, so I'm sneezing a lot. I thought I was past the initial spring allergies, but now I'm experiencing the beginning of spring for the third time this year. Saw a moose right upon arriving at my in-laws' house, just walking up the driveway and past the house. Looks like it got into a fight with something because the back was all beat up. So one of the theories was that it ran to a bear. So this is where I am right now. And I've yet to see a bear. I've seen basically every other form of Alaska wildlife thus far in my 2 trips here, but a bear is elusive. So we'll see. Got a week here. We'll see if I can cross off my list.
All right. Well, please do report back if you run across a bear. James, I know you didn't see any bears this weekend as you were at the
you don't know that
the stadium. Tim Elko and Andrew Vaughn. This is the story for the White Sox this weekend. Elko gets called up minutes before Friday's game starts. Vaughn hits 2 homers. He has a big RBI to start the scoring for the White Sox on Sunday, so the White Sox finally get some offensive production out of Andrew Vaughn. You wrote about how it could possibly work having both Tim Elko and Andrew Vaughn on the roster together and getting a chance to speak to Will Venable and get some of his insight on the decision-making that he's going to have in upcoming games with both of them on the 26-man roster. James, speculating, how do you think this is going to work moving forward for the White Sox with Elko and Vaughn?
It works for now. Like, effectively, like the kind of breakdown we had the playing time on Saturday is like Nick Maytown was leading the team in like appearances at DH, and that is like overtly who Tim Elko replaced. So that, other than the fact that they selected Nick Maton's contract a second time, had him on the roster for 3 days, and then DFA'd him for a guy who has been looking like his replacement for a bit longer than that. Other than the silliness of that, it's kind of a seamless transition because now you're kind of giving DH playing time to probably someone who's a lot beyond like how much fan excitement he clearly anticipated. And he got very big cheers like throughout the week. Like people are very aware of him. Like it definitely stretched beyond like the online fandom that I have to like acknowledge. But it's kind of a seamless transition for the roster currently is long term. And certainly if things are like good at any point, there's a crunch that kind of comes. Like taking away the DH spot from being able to use it, Benintendi is a bit of a crunch for him. If you actually had a healthy Tauchman, which he's literally on a rehab assignment there, you know, you're theoretically getting somewhat close to that. That's like another person who regularly you probably want to play just about every day, or especially against every right-handed starter. And whether that's mostly him in right field or you're, you know, a little easy of him with that because he's now pulled his hamstring twice, squeezing him out of the DH is maybe something you're a little hesitant to do. Luis Robert now battling a sore knee on top of just the general caution towards him, taking away the DH option for him, a little bit of squeeze. And now you have Josh Rojas back and you still want to play Miguel Vargas pretty regularly and Chase Maidroth pretty regularly. Not having the DH open or first base open for those guys probably squeezes it out for Lenyn Souza pretty quickly. You could say that Lenyn hasn't really, other than the fact that he actually leads the team in hits, probably hasn't played quite well enough to really maybe make the strongest case for why he shouldn't be squeezed out of the regular rotation. But kind of this optimal world where everyone's healthy and there's like a bunch of candidates for DH at bats, not really something that stays around for long. And I don't think the White Sox are in a position offensively with their production where there's really people to squeeze Elko's at bats out, on top of the fact that, you know, you can make an argument, and especially if he starts hitting a lot or hits more crucial 3-run homers, none of these people deserve opportunities over Elko in the first place. And that's the reason he should win out. So now that there's this window for him to put his foot in the door, which I think where the roster's at really allows for, he can obviously kind of take it and run with it and make it where any kind of replacing him as an anathema. And that's kind of, as much as I think there is a strain of fan that would just want him immediately have been called up like 3 weeks ago and put in the number 3 slot and ride or die with him from here on out. I think that's all you're asking for is give him a window to kind of show that he deserves at bats with his play. And it seems like they're set up to do that at least for the next week or so. And hopefully that goes well.
Yeah. Well, we'll see in how the next 7 to 10 days go for Tim Elko. I want to see him in the lineup every game moving forward, so the White Sox get more information whether or not Elko can stick in the major leagues, and maybe it continues to motivate Andrew Vaughn. It helps, you know, hitting 2 homers this weekend. I'm sure it's a coincidence, but he hit right away as soon as Elko got called up. The things we've asked for: pull the ball in the air, hit it with authority. He did it. So hopefully this continues for the White Sox as they make their way to Cincinnati. We'll preview that series in a moment. But in this episode, as we had Walker McKibben, the White Sox bench coach, kind of set this topic up with the first quarter grades. And we have entered the first quarter for the Chicago White Sox and dishing out our grades and how we think the first 40-some games have gone for the White Sox. Let's start with the offense. And Jim, I'll start with you. What grade would you give the Chicago White Sox offense after the first quarter?
I would say a D. Because of production, we've seen worse. We've seen, I think, meaningful gains in some plate approaches, and we've seen pitchers have to work a little harder to get them out. You can also say, like, well, they've had some injuries. Their plan A for right field was blown up with both sides of the platoon going on the injured list. Both corners have been blown up because Andrew Benintendi has been on the injured list multiple times. That hurts a lot. Luis Robert took a while to get going. So you basically had an entire outfield that was not what the White Sox envisioned. So the fact that, they're still making some strides is, admirable. Give them an effort in that regard. But I think, like, when it comes to production, how many games they've been in position to win, like their runs scored isn't terrible relative to what we've seen, but that's because they just score runs in clumps. But there are, outages, especially in home runs, 6, 7, 8 games without homers, that really make it hard to keep up in their own ballpark. So I think like it's not really a functional unit, but there's a pulse. It's a faint pulse, but you can understand what they're trying to do. And so that's why I keep them out of F territory.
Got it. James, how about you? If you were to give a grade to the White Sox offense, what would you give them?
Like, yeah, it's tempted to give similar for just performance. Like, it's a very bad offense. It's not fun to watch very often. As if I could get motivated to care about the lineups of a first-year manager dealing with this roster, I'd be like, it's mostly fine, and I think he's doing a lot of aggressive substituting, but like, man, some of the guys you've just picked up off the waiver wire who are being like put in central roles is a little mystifying to me at times. Or this is, I mean, I think
not a fan of Palacios batting leadoff. James, is that what you're saying?
That's I'm not trying to make it all about him. Like, I'm trying to like draw in a player who's actually been like, I think Matt Tice has been about as good as you would want, especially with how much like walks he's drawing. And because they have so few intimidating hitters, I get just like trying to put someone who's effective in the middle of the mix to like get on base. I don't know if he expected to bat third as many times as he has this season so far. Like, it's just not like a offensive type you usually see in that spot, but it's interesting. I'm tempted to give him like some sort of higher grade for effort, almost like a literal like. I think I've like tried to explain this to readers. Like, is it more frustrating to see a really talented offense like you have maybe in 2022 is a good example of like a talented offense that made itself outright average or a little worse from just poor plate approach, to a team that's like rubbing sticks together and like really admirable and scrapping through everything, but like can't make anything with it. Like, seeing someone get like 110% of their potential, but it's just really not much there. And not to say that I think they deserve that much credit. I think it would be more like a B or B minus for effort. Like, there's definitely things wrong with it. They're definitely like a better chasing team. They're not like, we've all committed to an ideal. Like, we're in top 5. Like, we have all studied the way of the blade and become devotees. And I don't think they have like that level of commitment to what they are doing. But it's clearly improved. The White Sox, man, can really trick you into grading aggressively on a curve. So, like, to indicate any like air between me and Jim, just to like say that I want to give an extra nudge for like the approach getting better, like C minus. This is probably as most would be appropriate, but like, we're talking about a bottom 5 offensive baseball that's like averaging under 3.5 runs a game. Like, shouldn't give them a good grade, even if like I think everyone's working hard. I don't think I can say this is good.
I'm giving the White Sox offense a D minus. The effort is why it's not enough. And what's really dragging this grade down for me is just how poor of a first quarter Luis Robert and Andrew Vaughn have. Right now, healthy-wise, for the Chicago White Sox, there's only 2 players that have a better than league average weighted runs created plus. Matt Thaiss and Edgar Caro. That's it. That's the list.
All
the
catcher offense.
All catcher offense.
Catching's gold, baby. You heard, you were there in winter meetings.
Mike Tauchman, Corey Lee, another catcher, the catcher offense, Austin Slater, Omar Narvaez when he was here for 4 games. That's it. That's the list. Benintendi's at 99. Of course, he's hurt. Miguel Vargas is now at 85. That's progress for Miguel Vargas.
He's
a little hurt. Lenin Sosa's at 80, and then you got Robert at 78. Vaughn's all the way down at 53. Vaughn's weighted runs created plus, even though it got a boost this weekend. Jacob Amaya, negative 40. He's breaking the scale. Vaughn and Robert with their poor quality, like, I understand what you guys are saying about effort, and I do see it, but the reason I give them a D minus is that Vaughn and Robert had a really poor first quarter, and well, hopefully that changes in the second quarter. But this is not giving me a lot of confidence moving forward for the White Sox in their rebuild on how they're going to score more runs. Right now, they're on pace to score 550 runs for the season. That would earn me a steak dinner.
As much as like Vaughn's batted ball numbers like suggest he should be better, or at least like closer to what his career norms would be, like that's probably like a focal point for like a disappointing level of progress in Chase. Like he's really, if anything, up from previous years. And that was something when they definitely talked about as like a central project of like, oh, we can get more out of this in the offseason. And right now we're in a spot where it's like, be happy, really happy to get 2024 Andrew Vaughn back at this current rate. So I think that's another reason maybe not give them too much of a curve for, because that would have been a big breakthrough if they were able to cinch it.
So let's talk about the pitching. And James, I'll have you start. What grade would you give the White Sox pitching staff as a whole when you combine the starters and bullpen?
Like they're middle of the pack ERA, so like it leads you to kind of feel C. You want to give like a little credit in terms of like, wow, they're really like executing to get these results out of the like the stuff that they have, the peripherals they have. They're overperforming, so to speak. You want to give them like some sort of like pat on the head. At the same time, it would be better if you had more guys you felt really good about being starters than long term and like the next competitive rotation than Shane Smith. Like you wanted kind of more of these surprise good contributors pop up, and I think for the most part you have a lot of guys like, wow, they're getting a lot out of him relatively speaking, are more your success stories than like, wow, this dude's a piece going forward. And I think Cannon's had some really good starts of recent. Davis Martin like has kind of reliably held down the fort in all of his outings, even if the strikeout rate is still like something he's battled with. Sean Burke has certainly had good outings. Like it's not like, and I think even like if Sean Burke like has more outings like Sunday where they're like the control isn't there to really stick in the rotation, like that's still someone I feel good about getting outs in some fashion on a good team down the road. But you would like more than just like, I think a lot of fans have expressed being stuck on the treadmill a little bit of like, yeah, we've got the one good starting pitcher that we all really look forward to watching. I think the rotation is doing a bit better than that, but as far as like, oh, we know this guy could be like a playoff starter like in 3 years, he's kind of a little bit alone as far as like this is feeling good for a long-term development as opposed to just like this is a good passable starter who keeps us in games and like is really useful on this team and probably useful on next year's team, which I think you could put more starters in. But so that, long story short, probably something around C, just because like that's the grade they got. They're a middle of the pack rotation, and maybe they'll fall back a little bit lower than that. You can certainly see how more than you can see them going farther up.
Yeah, I'm giving the White Sox pitching staff a C minus. The starters, shockingly, if you look at team ERA for just starters right now, Major League Baseball, the White Sox are top 10 in starter ERA. Bullpen, you can scroll right down to the bottom. The White Sox bullpen, not the worst in Major League Baseball. Colorado's bullpen is way up there after the weekend they had. But we've been talking about the struggles the White Sox are having with relievers. They're continuing to have that revolving door when it comes to the bullpen. It's going to be an issue all season long. So that's why I can't give them a higher than C minus. The starters are doing a very admirable job, and they have been very impressive and exceeding expectations, at least expectations that I had coming to this season. But yeah, C minus for the pitching staff for me. Jim, how about you? What grade would you give the White Sox pitchers?
It feels a little bit like the divide between Baseball Reference and Fangraphs when you're talking about wins above replacement and how Fangraphs kind of uses their evaluation of what a pitcher deserved versus Baseball Reference is closer to what actually happened, and they're not going to judge defense so much or just, pitcher fortune. Like in terms of locking this quarter behind us and saying that happened, whatever grade we give in the second quarter is not influenced by the first quarter. It's a clean slate after that. I would give them probably a C plus in terms of runs scored and getting the job done. In terms of like how good I feel about the way they've done it, probably closer to a D plus. They have a bottom 5 FIP, but of the teams in the bottom 5, they're the only team that's overperforming it. Every team with the worst FIP has a worse ERA. So you expect your regression to work positively versus you expect in the White Sox case, given that like the starters are having big problem, everybody's having big problems getting strikeouts, but the White Sox are bottom 5 in walks, but also like first or second hit batters over the course of the year, which adds to the walk total. They're creating a lot of their own problems that they've been lucky to sidestep. I wonder how the park is going to bite them when the ball starts flying more. Yeah, I could see this blowing up on them to where, Martin Perez is no longer walking through that door. What's in AAA right now? Not much in terms of somebody could step in if there's an injury. Noah Schultz has been wobbly. Hagen Smith has not looked ready for anything yet. So I feel like if I give him a C plus, that'd be like a case of if the bottom falls out, which it could, then you gave that team a C plus. So I think I'm just gonna go with a solid C for doing okay, watchable, keeping the White Sox in the games. The run differential is not befitting of a team with their record. Like their Pythag is better. So that's why I feel like given the names involved, given the youth of the pitching staff, given the bargain barrel shopping Chris Getz did for rotation depth and the bullpen, could be a lot worse at this point. So if you adjust for the curve that the White Sox so generously shift for themselves, I think I'll give them a solid C.
And then moving over to the fielding, I can start here. Going to the fieldingbible.com and the updated team defensive run saved. This surprises me, and it warms my heart, gentlemen. The White Sox are not last. Usually when I pull up this list, I go straight to 30 and see whatever this gigantic negative number is. Right now, the White Sox are tied 22nd at -2 defensive runs saved as a team. A lot of progress there for the White Sox. They're getting big boosts when it comes to shifting and fielding position for that defensive run saved. We'll talk about the coaching staff in a moment. For me, this has been a pretty big surprise for the White Sox, especially with guys like Miguel Vargas playing a lot better defensively than I was expecting. Yes, the guys that are not good at defense, Lenine Sos and Andrew Vaughn, continue to not be good at defense, but Michael A. Taylor is still a solid outfielder for the White Sox. Luis Robert is still solid in center field. So I'm going to give the White Sox defense a C. Jim, what grade would you give the White Sox defense?
This is something we've discussed, in our back channel chats in terms of like, how do you evaluate the White Sox defense? Because they are decent, like middle of the pack. Like if you look at outs above average as a team, they're tied for 17th at -2. So like well within the standard, like middle third error bar of how much you trust defensive metrics or how much they can swing over the course of like a bad or good couple weeks. So they're right in that sweet spot of like, won't hurt you, they won't define you, but they won't kill you either, which I think, every White Sox fan would be happy to have. But when you look at their offense and when you look at how few runs they've scored and how ineffective the unit is, one of the reasons why it's ineffective, or one of the trade-offs they're making, is that like Jake Amaya, I think, is probably the purest distillation of this approach of just, we're going to take defense at a position. We don't care what you hit. We might try to look for more offense elsewhere, but we need Amaya in that shortstop position, and he's going to punish you offensively. But, of the guys who can make plays at short, like he's going to be better suited than most to cover that ground. And, Michael A. Taylor getting a lot of playing time, kind of a similar reason. So I think like if you look at the choices that Will Venable is making, they should have a good defense based on who they're playing. We could see that shift backwards, like say if Andrew Benintendi experiences a prolonged run of health. I think we're still saying as the catcher playing time shakes out, like who's good, who's bad in terms of framing, blocking, and throwing. But I think like as a unit, they're probably playing C plus B minus. It's just, it comes at a cost.
Got it. How about you, James? How would you grade the White Sox defense?
Yeah, it's like similar. It's maybe even more harsh. Like it's not for it being like what's supposed to be kind of your team identity. Like this is the sort of thing we can control. It's not good enough to be that. That said, not to draw like too deeply on recency bias, but to literally take like a example of today or Sunday and extrapolate it and say it defines the whole team. Like Josh Rojas looked like not good out there defensively. Like for a glove first signing, he's kind of digging himself a hole with how he's kind of claying some things mechanically out there in the field in the early couple of days. So I felt like he had probably 3 balls that he like didn't field cleanly just on Sunday alone. He had another one on Saturday, and I don't know if any of them went for errors because one of them got like scoring change corrected into an error. But who knows what an error is nowadays watching the scoring. But Tice also like singled him out as like calling the back pick that got them out of like a major jam. And I think that kind of encapsulates guys like Lenyn Sosa and Andrew Vaughn haven't like gotten better like hands wise. Edgar Carroll I think has been pretty good given that people are trying to test his arm like constantly, but it's still not like a good pop time. He's not going to like you're not going to mistake him for Corey Lee. They haven't been able to make guys mechanically or physically better in some way, but you're seeing them do more ambitious things defensively and pulling them off more reliably. There are inefficiencies like, yeah, we understand like Brooks Baldwin's going to be worse playing in 9 different spots than he would be if you focus him on one spot. But like looking at the fielding Bible like site, like he's a more talented defender than -6 DRS in a quarter of the season. Like that seems like maybe there's a little inefficiency going on there with how he's being used. And obviously like neither of the guys that really run out there have been like good framers, historically. But given how much kind of resources they push towards taking that super seriously, like the fact that they're still below average, a little disappointing. It's a lot harder to overnight someone into a good framer in this league where everyone's doing kind of the same things out of literally the same mechanics all the time. So progress is going to be incremental, but you're just not quite seeing this is what we define, what we hang our hat on level of production. You're seeing what's clearly better than last year with a lot of similar personnel, but maybe not quite like we've built a team identity in a way you can clearly see. And maybe that's unrealistic to think in the first quarter of the first season of a pretty much new, managerial regime. But I'm more inclined to go C level because it's been about average-ish as well, even if like our standards for that have been made lower and our expectations were pretty mild on like what they could do in a single year.
So let's talk about the coaching staff. James, you get a chance to talk to these guys. How do you think they fared in the first quarter together as a group? I know that they're still learning, a lot of first timers in the roles, especially with Will Venable, but how do you think they have fared?
I don't like, they seem well regarded by the players. Might be speculative to put too much into it, but like obviously with like the way all of us have like talked to Ryan Fuller a lot and focused on him as like this big change agent of the organization, I think the players, whether they're perceptive of that or not, like, and obviously some of the stuff that's going on with like individual hitters, like if I hear about it in a Fuller interview, I kind of reference that to talking about it. They've been like wanting to like, hey, Marcus and Joel are like big parts of this as well, type of input. And a lot of guys in spring training pointed out like previous rapport with Thames, and that's why they were comfortable coming here. And that's why like the hitters meetings are like places where they feel like they can speak up. And I think the White Sox touted a lot in bringing him back, like that there was like a lot of soft skills that he brought to the table, that why he could be a big part of, even if there's like a larger, new direction under Fuller, that like these were talents that were worth keeping. So seeing that like vouched for, I think it's worth noting. You would love to see like someone from the bullpen really click with consistency. They certainly have done things I think are progress with Jordan Leisure, but maybe not gotten him to what we thought Jordan Leisure could be at the start of last season yet. But generally, I think their pitching operation, just in how they're kind of defying. I mean, as we wrote last week, it's the worst stuff plus in the league as a staff. So theoretically, they're to be like around 18th or 17th ERA. I haven't checked it recently. They're Wile E. Coyote walking like 5 steps off the ledge and doing pretty well. So I know Katz is a little bit of like a divisive figure because he's overseen so much like struggles, and I talk to him a lot, and so I know I'm a little biased towards him, probably just because he's such a good source of information and understanding pitching. But I think generally they're overperforming the raw ingredients in that area as well. And you listened a little bit to the Walker interview today, where the main thing he said with Will is relentless positivity, which we were joking about how relentless is it, or did he yell at what's his name, Bill Miller today, I choose to relent my positivity to you, sir, or is that what got him tossed? But generally, I think has been someone, and he has the advantage over Pedro of kind of knowing what he was coming in for really early, but he's been just really not shaken by anything that's happened at any point. That's just his demeanor. Maybe he would have maybe that'd be aggravating if they were neck and neck with the division race, and he was just still kind of strolling up, going, "Hey guys," to every post game briefing he does, even after crushing losses. Right now, with where the team is at, it's well, this guy's not broken by what he just witnessed. So credit to him. It seems like he's going to keep a very steady keel. So, the team's really bad. They're playing really poorly at portions. They had one of the most mind-bendingly awful games we saw just less than a week ago. So I don't want to give them an A because they're all nice guys or something like that. But and obviously it'd be nice if they could score runs. But I've leaned towards at least B until we find out everything is actually their fault later in the season, and I'll ask to amend this grade posthumously.
Okay, sounds good. I'll make note of that. How about you, Jim? How would you grade the White Sox coaching staff?
I give it I'm in this territory a lot, but a C with a shrug. In terms of I don't know. There are signs the fact that, and speaking of recency bias, the White Sox have multiple times gotten outs on a first and third stolen base attempt. That's something the White Sox had no answer for last year, whether it was giving up the double steal, just not paying any attention to the runner at all at first base, and just being I guess there are two runners in scoring position now, and taking it as the universal truth. We're seeing more thought put into some defensive situations. I think the shifting has been a little bit better in terms of hard hit balls, and the camera cuts to the behind home plate camera. Oh, there's a guy there. You got a man there. And I think there's, it's a little bit anecdotal in terms of how processing it, but just seems like they have a man there more, which I would take that as a step forward in their preparation. I do think Venable, his attitude is kind of what they need, and it was the first thing that jumped out to me when the White Sox hired him, and they first identified him as a former big leaguer, you're in the headline of whitesox.com. And I don't know whether the content editor putting headlines in has a direct line to Chris Getz or people in the front office to say hey, elbow Grifol in the ribs for this, or kick him out the door for this trait. But there does seem to be a little bit more of a security in how Venable presents himself. He's not under the gun sweating who can I blame this on, or who do I need to appeal to, who do I need to make sure I'm on the good side of. It's just more hey, it's you saw the record last year. That's kind of it seems to me a lot of his answers are prefaced with that unspoken agreement between everybody in the room, or everybody absorbing the information is you lost 121 games last year, and then they cut payroll by half, so he's not going to be a miracle worker here. We're gonna all be in this together and hopefully find some good parts to take going forward. But we're in a junkyard right now, and we're looking for some good deals. We're looking for some parts that we can use for a better engine or a better machine on discount.
Yeah, I give the coaching staff a C grade. So those are our grades for the first quarter. Let us know what your grades are for the White Sox in the comment section on the SoxMachine.com post, or hit us up on social media or on all the platforms at Sox Machine, and how you would grade the White Sox first quarter. The Chicago White Sox go back on the road. So this week they're at Cincinnati. They do come back to Chicago, but they'll be at Wrigley next weekend. And for the Cincinnati Reds series, we are sending James out there, so he'll be in Cincinnati, Ohio for this series. Again, huge thank you to all of our Sox Machine supporters. The Reds, confounding. They're 20-22. They're 3.5 games back, though, in the National League Central, but that's fourth place right now in the division. They lost their last game. They are 3-7 in their last 10 games. Part of the confounding part, it's like 1 week, hey, they're above 500. I'm looking smart. The next week, what the hell's going on? The Reds are only 9-10 this year at home, so they haven't been playing. It's not this like home away split that sometimes the Reds get. Offensively, the Reds are just a tick below a 700 team OPS. That's good for 13th in Major League Baseball, but they're hitting worse at home than they are on the road. Again, confounding. Pitching-wise, the Reds, a 3.95 staff ERA for the starters. That's good for 15th in baseball. The bullpen's been better. A 3.46 ERA, that is a top 10 unit in Major League Baseball. Comparatively speaking, for the White Sox, a 4.62 ERA is a bullpen. That's 21st in baseball. A 3.66 starter ERA for the White Sox. That's good for 9th. But the White Sox are better starting-wise at home than they are on the road, which is also confounding for the White Sox pitching at a hitter's ballpark. But that's the first quarter for you of the season. Your pitching problems for this series, Tuesday night, 5:40 p.m. Central Time. It's Jonathan Cannon against left-hander Andrew Abbott. Wednesday night at 6:14 p.m. Central Time, Pete Rose Day for the Reds. It's the Dart, Davis Martin against Nick Lodolo. And Thursday getaway day, 11:40 a.m. Central Time, Bryce Wilson against Nick Martinez. And James, here we go for this White Sox Reds series. I don't know what to make of this Reds team. They're obviously not hitting on all cylinders, and we know about the White Sox road woes. I find myself somewhat optimistic about this series, but I could see the White Sox getting completely swept out of Cincinnati. These games not being competitive at all. And I do worry when Elko de la Cruz is on the base paths. Is he going to run wild, or is this going to be a good test for Caro and Theis, especially for Theis, who is so good throwing on Sunday?
They would have a hard time if they put Ellie on. Like, they're on the one hand, like, you've seen some games where like they did really well and positively affected because the Marlins were so aggressive, but they are going to like basically face teams being very aggressive against them until like they're proven consistently otherwise. I think there's more to it than just like in their, holding leads and whatnot than just Caro's pop times or Theis's pop times, but like those aren't super strong. And mostly they're going to have to keep guys off the bases, or they're going to deal with a lot of chaos, I feel. That said, like, Ellie hasn't been that good this year. Spencer Steer has been terrible, and that was someone I really thought was going to hit in that environment. They've dealt with like crazy injuries with Candelario and Nelly Marte. It's definitely kind of a mess, but with a staff that doesn't have big stuff going into a hitter's park, you do wonder about like when they are in the zone or when they get caught in the zone or when like people time them up. There is going to be hard contact, so you worry about them in a hitter-friendly environment where they don't miss a lot of bats. So I there's a world where like the Reds are a little just out of whack, and the White Sox execute their game plans right and do pretty well, and maybe some of their guys who have the fringiest of power ever get helped out by Great American Ballpark, or Tim Elko goes crazy. That'd be fun. But in terms of teams that you could see more easily hitting like 10 home runs in the weekend or week, baseball writers don't ever know what day it is. I think the Reds, you probably fear more of that happening than the White Sox being able to take advantage of it, where they're kind of nudged over the threshold where they do have power. You more probably fear of the Reds just blowing them out of the water based on how the Sox pitching staff is built. So mostly anxious about the series, about how far we'll go. The pitching that the Reds, there's no starter I think you see due up that you have some rational reason to feel confident about. Obviously anyone can have bad days, but there's no Graham Ashcroft with memories of like that absurd 11-run inning or whatever they had against them a couple years back in the slate. So mostly I'd say pretty worried about how they'll do. Try not to take that into my stress level anymore, but they're nice guys. I wish them well personally, and I don't want them going through an emotional turmoil of giving up 10 home runs to the Reds in 3 games.
Yeah, so Elly De La Cruz has got 14 steals. He's 14 of 18 this year. Matt McLain is 10 for 10 in stolen base attempts, but Matt McLain's batting 165. His OPS is 597 on the year. Wild. When he gets on base, which is not often, he's running. So that's something to watch is can the White Sox, especially with Terry Francona facing the White Sox, if the White Sox get guys on, can they get them to stay at first base and not run wild? Jim, what are you going to be paying attention to when you get a chance to watch in Alaska between the White Sox and Reds?
Well, Terry Francona, reuniting with him like a most AL Central manager and being so familiar with the way that his Guardians often ran circles around the White Sox. And when you look at the way the team is performing, like the record is not a Terry Francona record necessarily because it's not over 500, but just the pitching is actually pretty good, even though, you have some non-name brand pitchers helping out in that regard, like the Guardians have, the Guardians have Shane Bieber, but they'd also have like Aaron Savali coming up, and who's he? And it doesn't throw hard, and all of a sudden he's throwing like 3.7 ERA ball for 6 innings a game. The offense has some big names, but it's not functioning like they drew it up, which the Guardians offense seldom did. Like all of the options they went through in the outfield never panned out. In this case, like the infield for Francona is not what he thought. So that's what strikes me as like he kind of knows this team, even if he's new to the Reds and largely unacquainted with the National League since back with the Phillies with his first job. That there is something very Francona-like with the way it's going so far. So curious to see how that pans out. Curious to see if it has the same feel of watching the White Sox play a Terry Francona team. Because I do, wish him well in terms of, wishing the White Sox had gone for him instead of Robin Ventura. Always thought like that they could have pushed a little harder to lure a guy out of retirement, or just seeing how he was so flexible working with an underfunded roster and front office that would give him a whole bunch of parts like, hey, work with this. And he generally did. He was good at maximizing strengths and hiding weaknesses behind Jose Ramirez. And so will he do it here? I'm curious.
Again, we'll be recapping this series Thursday night after the White Sox conclude that series against Cincinnati. They do come back to Chicago, but they will be at Wrigley Field Friday. That's a 1:10 p.m. Central Time start between the White Sox and the Cubs. So quick turnaround for the White Sox after their series in Cincinnati when returning to Chicago. Reminder, the White Sox are 3-17 on the road. So we'll see on how the White Sox do this week when they're facing National League Central opponents in Cincinnati and the Cubs. And then we shift to our last topic like we do every Monday around Major League Baseball. And there's a lot of attention on what the hell is going on in Denver. Colorado fired their manager, Bud Black, finally. They need to do a lot more than that. Sell the team, get a new front office, a whole new way of thinking. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Like, I was very confident the Rockies are going to break the White Sox record of 121 losses. So the worst team ever, the 2024 White Sox, I think that's only going to last one season because the Rockies are 7-33, and they have a negative 128 run differential this season. Just awful. And my buddy, who is a Padres fan, Brent, texted me that in Saturday's win, which was like 99-0, the Padres are the first MLB team to score 20-plus runs and have their starter throw a 9-inning shutout since the Cincinnati Red Stockings did so against the Baltimore Orioles on August 10th, 1889. Yeah, the Rockies. Thank you. You're going to erase the 2024 White Sox from league history. We appreciate you. Continue to twirl, twirl, twirl all the way into baseball hell and enjoy your 10th overall pick in next year's draft. It's not going well in Denver. So That's my big thing around Major League Baseball. James, what is catching your attention around baseball?
First, to just add on, like, I think Dave Roberts had pretty pointed comments saying that firing Bud Black was not part of what Rockies need to do. I think he wound up like, I don't know if he intended it to be as much of a burn as he intended, for the franchise as a whole. But he said like Casey Stengel couldn't make a difference with that team.
What a Jerry Reinsdorf comment. Like, come on, Dave.
But it speaks to like Bud Black has this really wide coaching tree, which obviously includes Will Venable under it. And obviously he's been with like kind of a very regressive organization for a while. I'm not saying like I know for a fact that he's like still at the top of his game, but is somebody you think you will hear like a lot of managers across the game cite as a major influence and part of how they approach the sport. And also we lost like the only former pitcher turned manager that had one of the 30 teams when Black got fired as well, which is interesting, and also spoke to how he kind of crossed boundaries that you don't see cross as often. So I don't know if we'll talk to Venable about that or if you want to say anything about it, but someone very influential. And I think you're seeing a lot of like national writers talk about the blowback of like, how is this his fault? Even if just when the team's going like this changes somewhat inevitable. But
last year, to counter that, James, there's some people are like, well, it's not Pedro Grifal's fault that the White Sox are awful and they're on pace to lose 120 plus games.
Exactly. Like you just, at this point, you don't have this level of failure without change at all. I think it just speaks to like Black's reputation across the league more than like.
Sure. That I totally understand. Yeah.
Both that the response is that, and also like, this is obviously not even like, evildoer number one in the organization, or maybe even top 15. But when I was doing the piece of this early this week about, the White Sox having poor stuff, I was looking at a lot of different metrics and trying to pick what would like show their vulnerabilities most clearly. And something I probably didn't use a lot was metrics that used how badly pitching staffs are getting hammered in the zone, because the Baltimore Orioles are number one with the bullet and all those. Like anything that relates to like your fastball is getting whacked to hell, that's the Orioles. So even like I think a lot of their stuff is being second guessed. I think there's a lot of people are kind of a little souring on like their draft stock that they built up or the recent picks, or wondering when Adley Rutschman's going to look like a superstar again. But even if like that stuff gets right, their pitching is like so far gone. I don't know if it even matters this year. And watching them like lose a series to the Angels, can you imagine losing a series to the, like we all know what trouble that indicates. It's surprising that something that I think even a little bit of this front office saw as like their model for what they were supposed to do or what they wanted to be fall apart like this. We know some of the reasons. We know a lot of things they didn't do as far as shoring up their team or continuing to spend through their contention window, but the degree to like which they had just no pitching to speak of. A lot of and maybe like it's their fault for not pulling off more trades or better trades to do it, but a lot of people are talking about like, man, they're so genius to invest in hitting prospects. Pitching's so much easier to like find and acquire and develop on the cheap than the foundational hitters they've been able to nail top of the draft. It doesn't seem as easy for them to stockpile pitching. They're not making it look easy right now.
Is that a fireable offense? Like, does the new Orioles ownership need to start firing guys after this season if they don't turn it around?
I mean, open the checkbook before you start pointing fingers, I would say, for how they'd approach things. Like, sure, it's an inefficiency. It's something they need to be addressed. Like, theoretically, for the Orioles, like, that's your reason to go out and hire whatever your equivalent of Brian Bannister is to, like, rework your pitching development structure if this is, like, the fruit that you're producing. Not that they haven't produced any good arms. Like, if they're healthy, Bradish and Grayson, I think most teams would really be happy to, lead up their next wave. But right now it's looking like they don't have the depth necessary to really compete, and especially not if they're not going to take advantage of their hitting depth to spending free agency on their rotation and really make it more competitive than they have. So I think I'd probably lean towards like, why hasn't Rubenstein been the influx of cash that he was expected to be, or supposed to be more stable and more, invested, both on what the day-to-day needs are and also just literally investments than the Angelos ownership. But it doesn't seem like it's come to pass. But yeah, I think this is certainly a season where when the major league results are this bad and you can't scrap anything together that's even competitive, pitching wise, that leads to some uncomfortable questions on that side of its own, even if I don't think that's the root problem of why. I mean, we can probably say ownership is the problem for most teams that are having problems.
Yeah, about 80% of the league's problems.
I think the Orioles probably make you think of why haven't they spent more than anything else.
Yeah, they're in danger zone. They're actually overachieving their expected win-loss rate. The Orioles are 15-24. Their expected win-loss record is 13-26. Jim, how about you? I'll finish with you. What's catching your attention?
Twins winning 8 in a row. Like, can't figure them out whatsoever. I think, probably, Dan Hayes and Aaron Gleeman are scratching their heads too. But just when I'm ready to, expect Rocco Baldelli to be in that firing line, they store him back. They're back over 500. The AL Central looks as strong as it did last year with the White Sox team that's more respectable. So perhaps they weren't a paper tiger or the kings of bum slaying. Like, that's a development I wasn't expecting. Like the Tigers being good, yeah, we saw that last year. We saw them being really good at solving problems over the last 2 months, and now they're a little bit more talented. Sure, let's see how that plays out. The Guardians are the Guardians, but having the Twins in the Royals also have Bobby Witt Jr., and that solves a lot. But to have the Twins looking like they're on death's door and decaying, and then back over 500, is that a dead cat bounce, or are they back to what they should have been all along, just taking a very circuitous route to get there? I have no idea right now.
Well, we'll see in how another week goes. Yeah, the Twins have won 8 in a row. The St. Louis Cardinals have won 8 games in a row, and San Diego's not fading. Yeah, what about your fantasy team? What were you going to say, James?
A funny Bud Black anecdote that like Will Venable told early this season was, I think it was probably in relation like when Maton like had a couple home runs early. He said like Bud Black always had a rule that if you hit a home run, you were in the game the next day. And we asked him, like, what did you think of that as a player? He's like, oh, that was great. I mean, it was something we all like joked about, and like, someone hit a run, like you get to play tomorrow and like add this warm memories of it. And we were like, so is that the rule here under you? And he's like, oh no, we have a bunch of like objective measurements and like matchup studies that we do to conjure a lineup. Like that's not something we based about. So it seemed like that split behind like this very logical, straightforward like practice that like everyone has fond memories of, and then like, but that's not what we do anymore. We have all these processes we've lined up, like the gulf between someone being regarded like, this is really cool, this is really fun, or like this is straightforward and in a way that's delivered that produces warm feelings and everyone like feeling like there's a logical hierarchy versus like what we're doing in 2025 with all the information we have. So there could be a split with that, in terms of results and rapport a little bit. That could be a play. Obviously, that's one policy is not the most defining policy of Bud Black's tenure, but it was just something that came up while thinking about the gap between obviously where they're at right now and him being revered as a very good manager.
Well, we'll see how the Rockies do. We'll see how the rest of the week goes for Major League Baseball. But let us know what's catching your attention around Major League Baseball in the comments section on SoxMachine.com. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. You can subscribe to the Sox Machine Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can listen and watch the show and our other videos as well at youtube.com/Sox Machine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. Again, James will be in Cincinnati for this upcoming week, and he'll also be reporting at Wrigley Field over the weekend. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. We are also on Blue Sky as well. Check us out. We're at SoxMachine.com over on Blue Sky. You can sign up for a Sox Machine subscription to unlock all of our access of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball at SoxMachine.com. Monthly plans start at $5, and that gets you the ad-free version of both the podcast and website and the opportunity to comment on SoxMachine.com post. We also have additional tiers of support. We have some spots open in our Veterans Committee, which allows you to join the group chat, which you have direct access to both Jim and James and get all the whispers and gossip and rumors that James can share without getting in trouble from the clubhouse. So that's of interest to you. You can go and check that out on SoxMachine.com. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
In honor of Military Appreciation Month, Verizon thought of a lot of different ways we could show our appreciation, like rolling out the red carpet, giving you your own personal marching band, or throwing a bumping shindig. At Verizon, we're doing all that in the form of special military offers. That's why, this month only, we're giving military and veteran families a $200 Verizon gift card and a phone on us, with a select trade-in and a new line on select unlimited plans. Think of it as our way of flying a squadron of jets overhead while launching fireworks. Now that's what we call a celebration, because we're proud to serve you. Visit your local Verizon store to learn more. $200 Verizon gift card requires smartphone purchase $799.99 or more with new line on eligible plan. Gift card sent within 8 weeks after receipt of claim. Phone offer requires $799.99 purchase with new smartphone line on unlimited ultimate or postpaid unlimited plus. Minimum plan $80 a month with autopay plus taxes and fees for 36 months. Less $800 trade-in or promo credit applied over 36 months. 0% APR. Trade-in must be from Apple, Google, or Samsung. Trade-in and additional terms apply.